And I apologize. Yeah,
No problem.
sorry, cold.
That's okay. Good morning, Jenny. Good morning. We are here.
Good
We are
morning.
live. Glorious, crisp November morning. I can't believe December is around the corner. How are you today?
I am well, and yes, I'm very aware that December's around the corner because this afternoon I have to go and listen to my daughter's piano recital of Christmas carols at the school.
Oh,
So we're fully in the season. I'm fully realizing it's actually quite close to Christmas. But it's okay. Roll with that.
100%. 100%. For me, I think it snuck up on me. I had to ask Alexa what time Christmas was, and it was like Christmas is in 4 weeks, and I was like, oh my goodness gracious me! I need to
Shh, Alexa, shh.
do some stuff. So, but here we are, and not to sort of lament or celebrate the fact that some of us are more prepared or in the Christmas spirit than others. I thought we'd kick off with a little bit of an introduction, if I may, and then we can dive into the genesis of Dr. Jenny Hewitt. How does that sound to you?
That sounds good. Fine by me.
Okay, so let me rehearse. So welcome to everybody that's tuned in beyond Jenny and myself, and my mum, she always tunes in. Welcome to Coffee with Kofi. This is a podcast where we explore the journeys of inspiring leaders and change makers and uncover the lessons that help us all find greater fulfillment in our work and our lives more broadly. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jenny Hewitt, a visionary leader, researcher, and consultant whose career spans academia, health, youth advocacy, and social equity. Dr. Jenny, if you don't know, is the CEO of IntoNetZero, which is a UK-wide not-for-profit dedicated to opening doors for underrepresented groups in the renewable energy sector, and also the founder of Understory Ltd, which is Dr. Jenny's consultancy that works on systems change and workforce inclusion. My hope and my belief is in this conversation, we'll dive into Dr. Jenny's remarkable career journey, the bold steps she's taken to dismantle barriers, and the practical wisdom she will share for anyone looking to follow their passions and create meaningful impact. So grab your coffee without spilling it. Here's mine.
Here's mine.
Or your tea. Settle in and let's get started. So welcome and thank you so much, Jenny, for saying yes. How was the intro?
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, no, I feel very humbled by the intro, as I'm sure everybody does. It's like, oh, I did do that actually, and I did. Oh no, but it's really lovely to hear it, and it's exciting to think that there'll be a chance to kind of go over it because it does span a few different things. So yeah, I'm thank you very much.
No worries at all. I mean, my belief is when one is driven by and fueled by a purpose and a passion, sometimes we don't do enough sort of looking back to celebrate the small wins because there is always work to be done. There is always a mission to be completed. And so I hope that this proves somewhat cathartic in terms of just revisiting your old stomping grounds, some of the turns that you made rightly or wrongly, but still got you to where you are. So they've got to be right, in my view. Life is an adventure. But yeah, let's start with some context and around your personal story. I like a biblical reference, so the genesis of Dr. Jenny, and that is to ask where and to whom you were born, just to give people a grounding into who they may be seeing or listening to today.
Yeah, so well, my mum is my mum Moira Hewitt, and she is a pretty impressive individual in her own right. I definitely can't fail to put some of my thoughts around social equity down to her leadership in her own way. So she was always a teacher, but also a bit of a change maker in her own communities and things that she would do when we were young. We would always be sort of visiting refugees and visiting anybody really who was in need of support. I think my mum would kind of scoop up. So that's my mum. So that's definitely one of the influences. And she's English, so I'm kind of half English and half Ugandan. And then my dad, Ronald, he is similarly a bit of a freedom fighter and a social activist. So there is something in the DNA, I would say. And that's kind of the genesis of Jenny, biologically.
And for me, fascinating that the world is huge, but yet so small. Like a Ugandan man and an English woman, how did they meet? And I guess where were you planted? You know, where did you arrive?
Where did I arrive? So they met in Tanzania. and they were both teaching at the time. I think my mum was feeling a bit overwhelmed. She just arrived in Tanzania to teach, and my dad said, "Do you fancy a cup of tea?" She was like, "Yes." And I think they pretty much hit it off from there. And they consequently, you know, got together, had many interesting adventures and tales, some of which I'm only hearing recently, like the time that they were, you know, arrested for protesting something, spent the night in the jail. And my mum was very insistent, because she was British, she knew that she would be treated differently, but was incredibly insistent that the treatment was consistent for my dad. So there were some things that are kind of interesting, that come up in the backstory of them that never cease to amaze me, but they never really boast about. So it's quite a funny constant unfolding. But yeah, they my dad eventually left Uganda, well, Tanzania at the time, around the time that Idi Amin came into power, and my mum did a lot of work to help him come over and to make sure that he was safe. And they consequently got married, and then I arrived on the scene, and although they didn't stay together much beyond that in terms of a relationship with each other, they you know, they're still really great parents to me, and they get along fine. I think they've got a lot in common, so it's quite a nice quite a nice thing, me being one of those factors, I suppose, that they have in common.
Well,
So
that sounds like the glue that bonds people together. And I love these stories where it really isn't about the exoskeleton, you know, when there is a connection, whether it lasts or it doesn't last, you know, to have I guess a reminder and a representation of the love that once upon a time they shared, you know, in you, and that you had everything that you need from both of them, shall we say, even though it was outside of the traditional, they're still married and together and blah blah blah. It's really beautiful to hear, and yeah, inspires hope for many. So are you an only child, or do you have some other siblings that are...
No, I've got 4 other siblings. So I have my brother, well, 3 brothers. Sorry, I've got 3 brothers, but I was just thinking of the first brother. So my brother Adam, who I my mum's, so I grew up with, my mum's son, I suppose. And then, yeah, my other 3 lovely siblings, who are all doing very interesting things, all quite similarly social systems change oriented. And actually my brother, although he works more on kind of health and he's a sports expert, so, but it's still kind of around social giving and thinking about the whole person. And so there is a bit of a theme. But yeah, it's been yeah, they're wonderful siblings, and it is quite a rambunctious large family, but we all bring something quite unique to it, I think, in our own ways.
That is beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. Then now I feel like I've got to know you better. I'm sure the listeners will feel similarly. And my next question was really, I'm fascinated by the multitude of roles played by women in leadership, and so wondered whether you have other duties of care outside of work. I think you touched upon piano recitals. I've got one, but yeah, please elaborate.
I do. I've got 2 gorgeous children, Felix and Rose, who are, I mean, you know, they're also full of mischief and really rather funny, which is great, by the way. No one ever tells you that about your children. You get all the sort of, they'll be so sweet, and and it's wonderful, and you bring them up and raise them, but no one tells you how funny they're going to be. I mean, I'm literally in stitches most weekends. They're very dry. So I absolutely love being their mum. And a lot of the reason I do what I do since they've been born is very reinforced by their existence, obviously, because, you know, I think like any parent, you do want to make the world a better place, but it's never just been that for me. I think because I've always worked with young people and children, I've always just had the sense that also the world are our children, you know. But I do have 2 of my own to contribute to that, and they're doing their own funny little things, and have their own funny ways of contributing, hopefully, to making the world a better place. But yeah.
How old are they now?
So Felix is nearly 14 and Rose is nearly 8. So yeah, 7 and 13, but not for long, which is extraordinary. That feels very, very quick. Yeah, as parents, I think that's the thing that's quite frightening. There's this bit at the beginning between 1 and 2, which is quite slow because there's a lot of day on day work and that kind of constantly in it feeling. And then suddenly that bit post 10, woof, and they're gone. And I think you start staring down the barrel the fact that actually you're not going to have the privilege of being around them all the time forever.
100%.
That won't be. And as my mum always said, you have children to let them go. So I am always
Mm,
in my mind thinking, how am I preparing them? How am I shaping something that makes it easy for them to take those next steps? It's never about, you know, me trying to kind of keep them. I think that's a really important mentality, is how do you prepare to let them go, and how are they ready for that? But my goodness, when they get to teenage years, it's so quick. And I think
yeah,
it's quite extraordinary. And it feels, I think what's really overwhelming, and actually Christmas is a real time for this, is you're full of nostalgia
yeah,
at certain moments. It's like, woof, you'll get a Facebook memories or Apple memories, or throw something up and you're like, whoa, that was surely only a week ago. And of course it was 5 years, you know? So it's a complete blessing being a parent. But if anything will remind you of the swiftness of life itself,
mm,
it's raising children. It's a
yeah,
tiny portion of your life, actually, that you're doing the hard graft. And there's plenty of years where the toys aren't moving and the house stays tidy.
yeah,
But it's, in a way, speaks to a kind of wider mission of just generally, how do you approach life, because it's fast. So what
well,
do you leave behind? You know,
yeah.
how do you let it go? How do you let it go
Oh,
well?
yeah, I've lost track. This is Gem 3.0, but I've lost track. And it honestly, it chimes with me significantly, because what your mum said about you have children to let go, I didn't frame it that way, but I'm definitely going to be borrowing that. My view is that we love deeply but hold loosely, which is a similar sort of play on that. And, you know, I remember having my first and holding him aloft like the Lion King and looking at the pride of the rock and all the rest of it. He's now 16 and a
Woo!
cat. So when he's with me, feeding, maybe some money, but he makes his own money and he's out. I no longer occupy center stage in terms of entertainment and other things. And I do think, and I hope there is a heaven, but if there isn't and it's some big Ponzi scheme, I do think that the legacy we leave is with those that we've had impact with. And the
Yeah.
closest connection you can have is, I guess, perhaps with a partner, but definitely with a child, because they will be in the next generation. And if you are able to support their development in positive ways, then everybody they will meet will experience the imprint that you've had on their life, but in their own unique way, if that's not too woo-woo for this time in the
I
morning.
totally understand what you're saying. I feel exactly the same. I think ultimately they will see beyond us, and
Mm,
our role is like to sort of guide their vision. It doesn't mean you shape it and you tell them what it should be, because you
mm,
have to accept that what they're going to see without you. A lot of their life they will do without you.
yeah,
And it's wonderful to think that, actually. What a
mm.
privilege. And the fact that it was your child, like, wow. It's
I
a
love it.
real
I love it.
gift.
So look, if I get up there, my name is down and I can look down and I can smile. I look forward to that. If I don't and I go to sleep for the last time, and I think they're in good shape, you know, I think they're resilient, I think they're adaptable, I think they're going to find their way, then, you know, I'll rest easy and try and leave them to it.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same. Let's hope we get to look down. But
Yeah,
yeah, as you say, if not, it's even be able to look yourself in the mirror on that last day will be, you know, and see yourself eye to eye and let go is a good feeling. Yeah.
that is. I see. I told you, I had some thoughts and questions in mind, but I've gone off topic because I didn't know what you were going to say. Didn't know your mum and I are basically the same person, nor that you and I share many of the same things. But to keep it progressive, um, having two children and doing the many things that you do, which we'll definitely come on to, how do you strive to maintain your balance?
So I think one of the things that I have almost kind of doggedly learnt, and I do wonder whether this is something that came from my mum, because she was a single mum and she was a teacher. And like many teachers, you had in those days, it would be the books that you'd bring home to mark,
Yeah.
thousands of them. Nowadays, it's a lot of it's kind of online, but regardless, it can spill right into your personal life. And my mum was very good at apportioning a period of time, and then she was there and she was kind of around, and then I don't know what she was doing once we went to bed, but there was a limit. And certainly during holiday time we got time with her. And I think what I've tried to do, in terms of keeping the balance that keeps you sane, you need to make sure that you're actually, do you know what, there was an academic who put it really well to me, and this was partly about work, but I've kind of used it in life as well. academics said to me, as a professor said, your PhD should be a third reading, a third writing, and a third just walking and thinking. And the emphasis, he said, is on the thinking and the time when you're doing nothing. There's a lot of time you can be doing busy work. And if you're overwrought and you're overwhelmed, you'll be doing a lot of busy work that won't come to fruition. Nothing, there's no point in it. So you'll be missing your family, you're not around for them, but you're just doing work that never gets anywhere anyway. What a sad waste of time that is. So I try to keep some level of balance, because I think there's something around what happens when you're not thinking about thinking. So you're just pushing your kid on a swing or making some peach tea or whatever it is that you're faffing around with. Quietly back in your subconscious, things will be processing. You don't need to force it. It will be happening. So just let that space be. And because I think I respect that time, and because I'm also, predominantly have been a solo parent, so I've always had to be quite careful about time, I won't let other people's unhealthiness around their work principles and their work ethic impact on mine. So if there are other people who want to work late, who want to text in the evening or, around bedtime or at silly whatever, requests that don't quite realistically fit in with any kind of a lived life where you're balancing it with family and friends or whatever your chosen family is, I will wait until it's back on the time that makes sense for me. And I think you have to hold to that, not only because it's an important principle for your own sense of balance, but also because it leaves a legacy to others. So there will be other people who don't have the choice. So perhaps they're caring for an elderly relative and they don't have the option to be answering texts and emails late at night. Or you'll have other women who come into a workplace and, you know what, they're absolutely exhausted, come back after a baby, they're trying to do full time, someone's demanding an 8:30 meeting for God knows what reason, and actually it's not inclusive and it's not a place where they feel they're anything other than run ragged. So if you can hold that space for yourself and you can hold that space for your team, then I think you do a wider thing of modeling how a workforce should be. It should be a part of your life. It shouldn't be your whole life. Your mission and your vocation and your sense of what your passion is a separate thing. That's something internal and integral. But I don't think your working hours should be spilling into all areas of your life. And I think one of the issues that we slightly have from working from home is that that can become an undisciplined thing. There's a lot of expectation there. So we have to be, for me, it's just about switching off. If that means I have to move apps to the very edge of my phone so I can't see them or turn on my own, I turn on my own downtime. I'm like, I have it for my son obviously, and I'm like, do you know what, let me just turn on that for myself as well. But I think if you go on holiday, try not to just leave your phone. You don't really need it, have it on flight mode. There's not much that nothing's gonna happen. I think it's just that kind of discipline gives you the chance to just breathe and think. And actually, as I said, a lot of the amazing stuff comes from having a rest. A lot of so many people come back from the Christmas holidays, come back from the year going, hang on a second, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this, or I feel really passionately about that. It's because you've had downtime, and that's where a lot of the clever work happens. So I try to keep that model for myself and anyone that works for me. It's really important, I think.
So powerful, letting that subconscious percolate a bit like the old school coffee machines down and then find its level and its balance is incredible. And I think this is why we needed to do this. We had to, because I think it's especially when you start out in your career and you look around you and you may not ask the questions, you will make observations, much like when you look on social media, like, oh my God, look at them, they're doing this and they're doing that. You have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. And so I think you dispelling some of the myths around the hustle culture that some of us experience or witness is really, really powerful. So you've dedicated your career to building inclusive pathways into the green energy transition. I guess, what inspired you to focus on sustainability and equity particularly?
So equity, to be honest, I think that's always been there. I don't remember a time where fairness wasn't incredibly important to me. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that I've always been fair. I'm sure there are moments where I probably haven't always got it right. But the overriding principle of what actually sits right with me and with, I guess, the wider society and a community is always the most important factor for me. So in terms of equity, that feels like it's always been there. And I remember every time I've sort of deviated away from that, there was a sort of misguided time after university where I went and worked in fashion, which I did really enjoy. It was interesting, but it just didn't have any depth. I was working for a fashion magazine, famous one. I won't name it, but it was one of the big ones, in the fashion cupboard, as they called it, one day. And I just thought, what am I doing here? And in fact, not that long before, a friend of mine had sadly died, a musician friend of mine who I was very, very close to, and who was at the peak of their success at that point. And I just thought, if there's anything, he was a wonderful person whose, I think, legacy, yes, his music, but he was also incredibly bright, incredibly sensitive, incredibly shy, all these elements that weren't known because of the fame and the music and whatever. And I thought, if I can do one right thing by him, it's living as he would like to have done rather than what he was being pushed into. And so I thought, I'm making a choice now. And I went off a very comfortable wage, right back to the sort of menial wage of being a learning mentor at that time. It certainly wasn't much money, working for a school in East London, Royal Docks. And it was absolutely transformative. I never lost that kind of feeling that I had to stick with what my initial principles were. And I think any time that I've been tempted to kind of move away, but there's this glistening thing, and what about that golden thing? It's like, no, it's not going to sit right with me, and I won't be able to do my best. And in terms of sustainability, again, I think that has always been there. I think an important part of that is that I didn't always grow up in this country. So I grew up in Mexico, and that's where I spent some of my childhood. So a lot of my memories are of huge ranging vistas. And although I was in Mexico City, we also traveled so much throughout sort of Central and South America. So a lot of my memories are these huge, vast landscapes. And I think anyone who's been anywhere kind of around there, or indeed another country which had a huge impact on me visually was Uganda, of course, which is, I'm half Ugandan. Again, when you see these kind of huge, rich landscapes, this sort of mottled red clay and these kind of huge forest greens in the distance and hazy blues, you can't imagine letting that go. It just, the idea of leaving the world and having done nothing but dismantle that incredible natural environment, which ultimately will always win anyway, just doesn't make sense to me. And I want other people to be able to enjoy it, and I want there to be balance. And so for me, sustainability has always been partly a reflection of what I've always seen around me, I suppose, or had growing up, and then what feels important in our communities as well. Us being sustainable and working together works for us as a community. When we were all sort of sharing cups of sugar and passing notes to get, someone's granny some help during COVID, for example, we had on our road alone, we had a sort of kindness group where we'd offer, does somebody need a dinner? Have you checked if Pat's had her pills? Whatever it was, everybody was looking out for each other. There was a sustainability to that. We were sustaining each other. And I think there's a kind of wider meaning of what sustainability is, and there's a wider impending frightening possibility that we are in an irreversible climate change situation. There's that's a huge motivator, but there's also that it just does us good to work together and to reuse and to share and to make good and to be included and to feel part of something that's about our natural environment. We are so intrinsically a part of that, and you'll never see that more than when you live amongst or are with people who have to naturally respond to nature, and believe me, I think when we arrived in Mexico, it was a week before the biggest earthquake they'd had. My childhood is sort of our memories like being surrounded by 3 mini torpedoes when we were traveling on a coach, and I was like, Mum, what's that? My mum's there going, don't worry, darling, just let's read this next story. So I think when you've seen the power of nature around you, and the power of community that I also see around me here in this community, in the UK, those things coming together are a really incredible force, actually. So that pulls in the equity side, and the whole thing just feels like it's the only way, really. It's the only way we get anywhere.
Spoken direct from my heart. And I'm just going to throw this out there. It's not part of the thing that I want to ask you. Do you reckon you fancy running any countries? Because there's a few jobs I reckon that could be going that might welcome your inclusive approach that would make the world a bit of a better place. So here live on Coffee with Kofi. Can we elevate you? Can we get behind Dr. Jenny for president? I mean, prime minister, world leader of some sort? What do you think?
I mean, you know what, I would, yeah, I think the problem with politics, and as you'll know, I did my PhD on young people's sociopolitics,
Mm,
which is about the small politics, not the big kind of stage and the theatrics and stuff. And I spend time at the Houses of Parliament and at UK Parliament doing bits and bobs, and have done at various points of my career. So I have a lot of time for the hard work that goes on there. But I think we were in a precarious place, and I need to see a bit of truth and kindness come back into politics on the front stage, and then
yeah.
maybe I would be interested in getting more involved. You never know.
All right. Well, you just tell me when you're running, and I'll be running the campaign, the funding campaign that you need. Chief hype man, vibes officer, you name it, whatever you need, because the world could definitely use some of what you've just shared there to bring us back to that connectivity. And I think it's easy when there is abundance, or a sense of abundance, for people to consider what needs to be done, and it's harder when there is a perception or a reality of scarcity. But when you talked about the COVID period, you there was this marvelous duality between seeing the best of people in terms of the community, checking if Pat's had her pills, and then seeing the flip side, the very worst of people. I remember being in the supermarket and the tussling to get toilet roll or eggs or flour, and I was like, oh, people, why so high and then suddenly so low? But we have that and many other things within us. And so no, I just appreciate you sharing that. And let me ask, with you working across academia, 4 degrees I believe you possessed, am I lying or am I lying?
No, well, yeah, so I've got a degree and 2 masters and a PhD. Yeah, that, I guess that is 4, yeah.
You completed it basically. You got the undergrad, the bachelor's with undergrad, the masters, and the doctorate as well. So you completed it. So 4 degrees. You worked in health, youth empowerment, and community organization. How do these diverse experiences shape your vision today?
I think they all play a unique part. And I think one of the things that is really important to me, and I always say this to young people, and it's something that I'm really minded of when I'm thinking about inclusion and bringing young people into the workforce for net zero, for
Mm,
example, especially young people at risk of exclusion, is don't think you have to have it all figured out. Not even remotely do you have to have an absolute clear sense of what you want to do from the age of 16 or 15 or whatever it be. It will be, moments will meet you and you will rise to them if you trust yourself. And sometimes you'll get it wrong and you will learn from that. And sometimes you'll think, oh, I wasn't expecting this opportunity, but you'll go for it. And if you just hold on to a sense of some basic principles, and I think, take chances, what you actually get involved in will sometimes collate to be a completely different picture than you had in mind when you were a kid. So
mm,
for me, there are diverse experiences, but partly that's because I took chances. So the health stuff in particular, the stuff I've done recently, that was a chance. I was during COVID. I was finishing off my PhD, by the way, the funding of which was looking like it was going to run out. So I had enough time to finish before COVID hit. Suddenly I'm at home with a 2 and a 8-year-old,
oh my goodness.
homeschooling and all the things that you have to
Oh my
do.
goodness. Yeah.
And the funding because I had a scholarship, the ESRC scholarship, was about to run out, therefore, because I was like, well, I don't have the time to write this. This isn't happening. And I'm there going, okay. Anyway, fortunately, that was extended and the ESRC sorted all of that out. But as we came towards the end of the really big first lockdown, I'm thinking, I need to get myself a post. I hadn't finished my PhD, by the way. So I'm finishing my PhD. I'm like, I need to get myself a postdoc because I need to earn some proper money as well, and I've got my small children. And I'm like, do I take that chance or do I kind of just fudge it or what? And I thought, no, I'm going to give this a go. I ended up with a postdoc at the University of Manchester working for the Centre on Dynamics of Ethnicity. And the focus was health inequalities. And it was fascinating. And obviously it was the most timely thing because everybody was talking about it. So my research had to be done quick. I had to be getting the reports out there through the Runnymede Trust. I had to, it was a big focus on code and what code had to say. And they are fantastic anyway. But it was just it was taking that chance on thinking, well, this isn't quite my usual sphere. I usually am focused around young people in advocacy, but I could do this. I think I've got something to say. Ethnic minority older people. and health inequalities. I can speak to that, you know, and I did. And I ended up forming relationships with an incredible group of older people who I literally had to access in such extraordinary ways. So you'll know to some extent through when you're recruiting for research, you know, it's not easy. You've got to be the sort of person they're going to talk to. And that just depends on who you are. But then you add COVID into the mix. I can't go out and find them. I've literally got to find them in some remote way. Now, don't forget, this is ethnic minority older people. I don't know about your grandma and grandpa, but mine aren't using the internet regularly. Do you know what I mean? Like,
my mum is not using the internet.
No,
let my grandpa.
no, they're not. And the reality is you're going to get them through the phone. So I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Meals on Wheels, community groups. Who is accessing these people, these isolated people when they're in need? And it's, of course, then you start learning about these incredible community organizations and church and mosque groups who are, you know, running off the sniff of an oil rag, as my mum would say, but they're making it work and they're reaching out to vulnerable people in their community. So just to say really that in terms of adding different facets of my career together, I've always gone for what feels like a soulful and ethical and human-centered connection. And that was one, and it was outside of my initial comfort zone, but it ended up being so rich and so yielding. And what I learned from those people and their experiences was it was a gift to me rather than the other way around. So yeah, I think you just have to lean in. You have to lean in and trust yourself a bit.
I mess with that. I mess with that mindset, and it's so ironic because I think sometimes when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and in your case, the postdoctorate teacher has appeared for me because I recently read. I'm currently reading a book by Stephen Bartlett. I think it's called Happy Sexy Millionaire, and he talks about how a spider monkey moves through the forest canopy. It has to let go, but has to go through it with full momentum, trusting that it will catch a branch. And what I loved about that is that it resonates a lot in terms of at times in life we'll face challenges, and I guess success in life is compounded by the decisions that you make. But when you are tested, it really is an opportunity to discover your character, but also your creativity, because what you just described there, maybe it's me wanting to put it into a framework, it speaks to, well, I haven't done that, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm not going to give up, and I'm going to keep finding ways to get around it. And then you built something that actually was more rewarding, if not equally rewarding to you as it was to the people that you were supporting. So the student is listening, I am listening, and I really, really think this is going to help a lot of people. Just, again, demystify some of the things around, we've got to have it figured out, we've got to have certainty, we've got to know there's going to be a secure branch to hold on to. No, like, sod it, like, swing your best swing and you'll catch something.
Absolutely.
You know, so thank you.
I think another thing I'd add to that, just lastly, is stay curious. Be curious in about other people. Be curious about things that you don't understand. Be curious about opinions that you don't hold. Just stay incredibly curious about the world around you, and I think that will always act in your favor as well. Yeah,
fire, absolute fire. The fact, mate, I think I can do it. I'm going to try not to hang up on you. Wait, there's some emojis that can, yeah, there you go.
Wow, I love them glittering.
Yeah, glittering hearts. Now, I'll stop before I mess up this thing. And then, so that with what we discussed, I feel that the foundation sets the stage for your leadership roles. So I'd love to talk about how you've carried some of those values into the organizations that you've been part of, that you've built, starting with being CEO of IntoNetZero. And it was great to have Gareth on earlier, some weeks ago, as being part of, you know, founding it and you running it. I understand a bit about it, that you're tackling systemic barriers in the renewable energy sector. But for anyone that doesn't know, could you just elaborate a bit more around sort of the core mission, maybe the vision that it has, and then I can get into some questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so look, IntoNetZero is exactly that. It's about looking at the systemic barriers that are preventing the many people we desperately need to join the net zero workforce from coming on board. And it's quite a sort of simple remit, but there are some real complexities in people kind of understanding how we begin to solve that problem. For me, it's about looking end to end at the pipelines, and understand the pipeline being, by the way, the kind of people coming into work, hearing about the work in the first place, the skills and training or reskilling that might need to take place, and then any kind of thinking around mentorships and placements and industry and what roles might be available. And of course, all of that sounds relatively simple, but it clearly isn't, because it's not working the way it needs to work. We need, Climate Change Committee, I think, have said we need 725,000 workers by 2050, and National Grid puts that at 400,000. It's fairly inestimable to some extent, I would say, because what the roles are and how they will shift over the next few decades is something that we can't initially kind of determine now. But what is certain is we're not going to do it with the same old people that are there already. And I think when you find yourself at industry conferences, and they are wonderful and they're really interesting, but they are very much populated by people that I think there are some similarities between them. There's a lot of white male middle class people in those sectors, certainly succeeding in those sectors. And the very basics of inclusion are being thought about, and there's some incredible people doing some wonderful work around that, but it is still a very slow turning wheel. And I think in order to get where we need to get to, we need radical rethinking about the net zero workforce. And that is going to mean looking at setting up, in what I'm doing with IntoNetZero, setting up 2 exemplar pipelines. So we've got Sussex and we've got Aberdeen. So it's about how do we rethink entirely how we engage with people to come onto those courses, not just young people, but women returners, people who have lived experience with the justice system, older workers, people who are refugees and asylum seekers, or people who have disability. Like, what is it that we need to do to engage with every community so that the word is out there? And actually, even that in itself, which sounds simple, it needs to be done effectively. I was talking to somebody called Ibrahim Kamara, who's an incredible creator, and he runs GWAP, about the work that we need to do to actually raise awareness in the first place. You know, we need to disrupt what people think the net zero workforce looks like. So it's about those first steps as well. Then it's about thinking about how skills and training can happen. How is it engaging? Does it feel to a lot of people that it's heavily focused around STEM or STEAM, as they're now called, you know, adding in the A as well, when actually we know that there is such a vast array of skills needed to come into the workforce, that you could be coming from an arts background and you're still going to find a place for yourself there. You know, there is so much needed. And in fact, creativity is an essential and integral part of building these industries so they're sustainable for the future. I think the really exciting opportunity that we have with net zero is to rethink it. We can reinvent an entire sector. And it's about people taking bold steps. So we need bold investment. We need risk takers at the top. What we've got at the moment is a slight wobble, a sort of ambivalence, people waiting for other people to take the first step. And we honestly do not have time. Having spent over 20 years in education and systems change and societal change generally, we've only got 20 odd years to get to 2050. We don't have time to be sort of pondering whether or not we want to invest a few 10Ks into running a scheme to bring on young people. That just needs to be happening. You know, we need to be seeing what works and what doesn't, having those discussions. I think one of the other things that's really important in terms of industry more broadly, and some of the things that I really want to get in amongst and change with the organisation with IntoNetZero, is we need to stop working in silos. There is a lot of siloization. So you'll have some really interesting inclusive thinking, but it's about a specific demographic, or it's in a specific area, and people aren't connecting up. And the reasons for that are broad. You know, the charity sector is under a hell of a lot of pressure. And community organizations generally under a lot of pressure. And so anything that's kind of add on or is a nice to have isn't necessarily able to make headway because people can't afford to focus on those things. But regardless of that, long term, it saves us money, and we make better inroads if we work together. So I think there's also something around lowering a kind of suspicion, a sharing of knowledge and sharing of resources, bringing together of the community really to do the work, and that is what's going to shift us towards net zero, so that we have a sector that is forward thinking, that is entirely shaped by the future generation. We don't need to have stuffy conferences with styrofoam ceilings and suits. It's not, we don't need to be doing it that way. And God knows young people coming into the workforce know that. We don't necessarily need to be having daunting places where people are having to give speeches and feeling nervous. And some people who are maybe neurodivergent or for whatever reason don't feel comfortable in the space, don't feel they can do that. So we only hear certain voices. We can rethink all of this. We can rethink how people work, where they work from, the times they work, what they bring to that. But it needs to happen. And those conversations need to be had, not just within industry, but with communities. So I go back to the initial point, which is the end-to-end, the pipeline. The pipeline needs to be connected. What IntoNetZero are doing is building those conversations around and with the groups. So that's, we kind of work as a conduit, a convener. And that's one of the most important things that you can do. Obviously, I've got trauma-informed practice, and I know how to work with groups that are ordinarily marginalised, because that's something I've done all my career. So it's not tokenism from me, because I won't have them be left behind. If I've engaged with your community organisation, you're coming with me. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not ticking your box because we've had a nice little meeting and then you're getting left behind. We're going somewhere, and you're going to get some great jobs, and you're going to transform the way that looks for people coming after you. But that has to be the bold commitment overall, and that's the kind of bold commitment we need as well with funding. So it's yeah, for me it's about looking at the pipeline, it's about less siloization, and it's about a very, very connected network where people are sharing knowledge and being honest that this is hard. It's hard. Inclusion isn't fully understood by a lot of people, but if we don't get this right, we are looking at a very vulnerable position for the UK in the future. So we have one shot. You heard it here first.
And in one take, you have sold to the man in the green tie the mission and vision of IntoNetZero. That was brilliant, and I can feel. I think energy doesn't lie, and I can really feel the passion you've got. And sitting back and just pausing to reflect just a little bit, for me, it now becomes apparent how everything that you've done before now, it comes into play really beautifully into this tapestry of work, if we could call it work, but vocation, if we want another word, that you have, because the research and academic background that you bring to it lends, my words, but a data-driven lens to the, the passionate plea to say we need to work differently and better. There's community engagement work that you've done lends itself to one part of the jigsaw puzzle. The work that you've done with policymakers, advocating, etc., solves another piece of the puzzle. So you've got policymakers, you've got the communities, and then you've got the industry. And I think it's just mind-blowing, because actually, if I look at it, who else will have interconnectivity or an understanding of the different pressures or needs of each of those areas better than you do? And this has to work. It literally has to work. So I'm not going to press any more buttons on my screen because I will break it. But yes to what you just said, and yes to, for me, widening the gate without lowering the bar, but making it such that the inclusion is understood not as a threat to the status quo, but an addition to and a betterment of the industry, so that it can get to where it needs to be, which will be in service of all of us, like, and our kids and the kids of the world that are our kids. So dang, I want to retrain. I want to be Dr. Jenny. I never said that before, but actually, yeah, Dr. Jenny, because you're going to change the world with this thing, I think. So good luck, more strength and energy to you and the team. Wow, that is something. I've lost what I was going to ask you now. I'm going to come back to it. I think one other thing that has come to me is, so we've got IntoNetZero and then Understory Limited, your consultancy on social equity and systems change. I mean, you've touched upon it, but how does it kind of complement your work at IntoNetZero, having that consultancy aspect and experience from that, really?
I guess Understory is my space. So I've always done little bits of consulting and picked up interesting jobs. And I think we talked earlier about the idea of being, like you said, the spider monkey and having that flexibility to let go and to move forward. That seems to be a bit of a theme, actually, that idea of letting go. But I think Understory, and the idea comes from this idea of the under canopy of the forest and the understory of what you see, what you don't see happening beneath, but creates the sort of rich, fertile ground from which things grow to be, you know, the canopy above. So it's a very circular process. And it's also, for me, it's about freedom. It's freedom to explore whatever kind of takes my fancy in whatever way I want to. And because that still feels quite important to me, and I think it keeps you limber, and it then ends up feeding back into the work I'm doing for IntoNetZero. So, for example, one of the things that I'm really interested in exploring with Understory, sorry, is some work around refugees and asylum seekers and the barriers that they face to the workforce generally. And there are so many things that we know are hugely impacting on the experiences of refugees and asylum seekers in this country today, and it's devastating to see what's happening in the media, and the way that people are being treated as sort of political hot potato. But what I have always been really focused on is voice and meaningful participation. So one of the things that I'm interested in exploring is how do we use, for example, verbatim theatre? And I'm in talks with a company called Paperbirds, who are one of the best verbatim theatre companies in the country, about how we think about voice and people's experiences and how we relay that to people offering employment or not offering employment. Where do we, you know, kind of tease out that misunderstanding? And of course, that speaks a little bit to people coming into the net zero workforce, but I also don't want to close opportunities down for the health sector, hospitality. You know, there are various sectors that people come to this country and are able to pivot and work in, and bring so much rich experience, so much talent, so much resilience. And that needs to be heard, needs to be understood. So I'm looking about, that's, for example, with Understory, you can explore that, and I can take that in a way that it will go naturally. So I suppose it complements IntoNetZero because it keeps me limber, it keeps that flexibility front of mind, but it also hopefully dovetails to offer some opportunities to people that we engage that maybe come into the net zero workforce as well. So there's different ways that will come together, but IntoNetZero is certainly the main focus. Understory is also providing the rich, fertile ground.
That's brilliant. You know, it's kind of a bit like the planet, but it's like a symbiotic relationship. You know, they complement each other in a way. And I have to ask, I've never come across verbatim theatre. So what is that?
So verbatim theatre is a really, really powerful tool. It's something that I might not explain perfectly, but I'll do my best. Essentially, a theatre company who's trained and understands verbatim theatre will work with a group, often a group that is kind of not heard and is marginalised, and people make assumptions about. So I've heard some fantastic examples of it being used, for example, with children who were care experienced, and there was an amazing academic called Maggie Inchley, I think she's called, who did a piece with the theatre group around advocating for these young people whose voices were not being heard with their social workers and with the social services that were working to support their care. And the people who went into the theatre came out in tears and said, I wasn't listening to what they were saying. They were saying the same thing, but it was performed, and it was in a space that there was a captive audience, and you had to engage with what was being said. And I think any opportunity that you can raise the voice and the profile of people who don't feel comfortable being in front of power and don't necessarily feel heard, and actually have maybe had some traumatizing experiences and are fed up with trying. So if you have an opportunity with theatre to convey a powerful message to a captive audience, that's where verbatim theatre, you know, really sits. And I think it's a very, very powerful community tool that we could use more often, actually, to kind of just create some of the much needed conversations that we are definitely struggling with in the UK at the moment. So yeah.
Oh wow! So this is I took your advice early on. Stay curious, and I've learned something, and hopefully some of the listeners will have learned something too about verbatim theatre. But I think that's talks to the power of human connection, because at times, you know, in the busyness of life, we can see things, but we're not necessarily looking at them, you know. And I think when you have a captive audience in the way that you've described, and you're compelled to really hear and feel that human experience from another perspective, that power to tell a story and to connect the emotions behind that can really make a difference. So yeah, thank you. If there's something going on, let me know.
I will. You'll be first row tickets. Don't you worry, Kofi.
Yeah, it will definitely speak to me. So just carrying on with the career journey for you a bit more, what one project or initiative have you been most proud of? I know it's like choosing your favorite child. I'm so sorry, but I said it. Why does it stand out in your journey, you know?
It's a really tricky question because I have done so many different types of things. I think certainly one of the most powerful experiences I had was working in a pupil referral unit. This was very early in my career, and it was not necessarily an initiative that I'd set up, but I was very much working for it as a learning consultant. But it was an incredible chance to engage with young people who had not only been excluded, but they had really given up hope. So it was a real for all the kind of fancy names that projects can get and the kind of publicity and all this and all the rest of it, there's the hard work being done on the ground behind closed doors that nobody sees. And in places like in those days it's called pupil referral unit, they have different names now, but where young people who are excluded from school, that's where you'll see some incredibly powerful, like intuitive connective work happening. So that was something I think that I felt really proud to be around, and incredibly very privileged to meet those young people and to have them in my life. And I remember so many of them so clearly in their journeys. They were incredible people, and I hope they've gone on to success. But I think in terms of an initiative that I found, I suppose also maybe found really quite fun, it was taking groups of young people. So I worked in, at one point, all of the primaries, secondaries and sort of special schools in Islington. I worked representing youth voice and participation. And I brought a lot of groups of young people. I organised people to come to the Houses of Parliament. And I sort of was not just the House of Parliament. I'd be like, right, and we want the local MP to tell us what they're doing for us, and I want you to speak to these kids. And to be honest, in Islington we had fantastic MPs, so we, they were very happy to do that. But what was so nice was bringing these like rambunctious kids who weren't just the school council, i.e. the good kids who get chosen to go on all the things, but the kind of kids who are going, well, what are you doing? Well, what's that? What's this in the gift shop? Where's the lollies? Brilliant. That's the people who you are serving as politicians. An incredible bunch of innovative, creative, uncontrollable, I hope, because I don't want a controllable group of children. I think that's worrying. People who are just full of joy and full of possibility. And I think bringing them into that space, making it feel less daunting, making them curious, letting them ask questions, making sure that their questions were taken seriously, and then bringing that experience back to their daily lives, that they had been heard and thought about in a kind of political context. That felt like a really fun initiative to be part of. And I know it meant quite a lot to them, and I think it meant quite a lot to their families as well. I remember talking to various parents. They were like, apparently, he asked this MP if, what was going on. And I was like, yep, that did happen. And so it should. And I think, it's often this, when you sort of trust people to know what's best for them. And there's so much supposition and assumption that goes on so often, at highest levels, all manner of meetings and discussions and thousands of pounds wasted on, in theory, thinking what people might need and not actually just going out and asking them. One of the other things I remember doing was getting the local housing service to come into the primary schools, and they came with all their little housing models and they were ready to kind of tell the children about housing. And the kids went, I know about housing. What I need to talk to you about is, why have you designed this council house that most of us live in, so that when you open the door, the washing machine's right there, and then you can't get past with the buggy? Because what I find is that my mum can't get in, and that means, and also, why have you got that toilet space or the washing machine next to my room where I'm doing my homework, because it's very noisy? Well, the housing people came out of it going, Jesus, we need to redesign. We need to redesign these flats. We have never actually asked the people living in them, let alone the children who observe everything. I mean, the obvious people to ask, how is it to live here? And the whole thing was completely, shaken up. So, and they'd gone in there thinking they had all the answers. And they came out with probably cost saving measures that they, took them an afternoon, but would have cost them thousands to get in focus groups. So It's stuff like that. It's just bringing people together and being really clear with people in power who've often got so remote that they've got snow on the top of their heads. Like, listen. You need to listen to people. Always get out there and ask questions, and don't assume you have the answers. So yeah, I'm not even sure what the question was for that one, but that's
No,
the kind of initiatives I like.
you've answered it, and to bring it back, it was just about a project that you're proud of, and I think there you spoke about a couple of projects, and for me, it honestly, like, inside, I'm going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, like, what a modus operandi, a way of living that can be taken away from that. Just to listen, to really seek first to understand rather than be understood. And I love your expression about people with snow on their heads, because it's true. And I don't lay claim to be anywhere near a perfect father, coach, or any of those things. But the moment that I started to ask my children's opinions on how we were going to run a weekend as a solo co-parenting guy, it really began the turnaround in our relationship, because I thought it was about me thinking and planning and doing this and that, and then there'd be this reticence or this resistance that would come up, and I'd be like, I don't appreciate it. I mean, I've planned this and I've done this and I've done that, and I just stopped, and I just said, do you know what, how about we do this old school? Let's have a team meeting, and you three tell me what you would like to do, and let me see my role as a facilitator of that rather than a director of that. And it was uncomfortable at first, but wow, was it powerful, because they would get me unstuck from an impossible situation where I needed to be at 3 places at once. And we'd co-create this harmonious environment where I realized we all want to be free in some way, shape, or form. And then having that freedom to express himself, I wouldn't always say, yeah, of course, let's do that. But them expressing themselves, it just changed the atmosphere, it changed our dynamic. And they were like, well, I'm going to come to dad with this and this. And sometimes I'm like, Dad, I don't want to know about that bit. But because I knew that we created this environment, there was a real magic in that. And it's, so when you said it, I'm like, oof, it really, honestly, them number 2 million, I'm taking that one. That's great.
I love that. I love that for your family, and that's such a fantastic dynamic. And it's something I try and do. And again, I think when you're rushed and you're coming off a work week where you've got too much going on and you're still wanting to get things done, it's hard to switch off. That's why it's so important to just lay down the kind of knitting, as it were, and be like, it's away for a bit, because they are so brilliantly magical at pulling you back into the present, aren't they, kids? And they're just, and that whether you're working with them or whether you're parenting them, if you actually listen, they're always just like, my friend said to me the other day, she said that her son went, mum. She said, what? She went, what? Ran upstairs thinking this is something really urgent. He was in the loo and he went, mum, see that pipe up there? You see how it goes up and then it goes down and it goes into the ground? She was like, what? But it just, for a moment, she's there going, oh, I hadn't thought about the way the pipe does that. And like, there's so much little magical moments that you get to live and enjoy, I think, if you just slow down and listen. Yeah,
no, it is. A good friend of mine, Ade Amadou, he said to me, he had done an MBA and he was working, and he was, I think at the time, 2 young children under a certain age. And I was like, how do you do it all? And he said, I realized very quickly that wherever I was, I had to be there 100%, because there was no going back. And that power of being present and the now, here and now, they do bring it to you with kids, because sometimes I'm like, what the fuck? Because they have it's not how I am or what energy I bring. I've got to come ready, and they're just going to ask of me what they need of me. And how do you want to show up? It can't just be when I'm zenned out and I'm ready for their conversations, because they won't bring it then. They'll wait till I'm under strain, under pressure. To be like, yeah, Dad, see you visited some mountains recently with your journey towards Zen. How about this? And I'm like, oh my God, like, wait, let's wait. Have mercy on me. So no, you're right. Embracing the power of now is a powerful one. Oh, this is great. We're cantering along. And I think we've talked about leading organizations, shaping systems. I think I'd love to move us towards the future and how you see that unfolding. And for me, the question I had was around how you see the intersection of lived experience and leadership, perhaps for yourself, shaping innovation in the net zero economy?
I mean, so firstly, in an ideal world, lived experience and leadership should be shaping innovation in the net zero economy. So I think there needs to be a really big focus on how we get there and allow that to come through. And that's going to be about those inclusive practices in the first place. But I think if we are able to create a situation where the people who are running the show, who are thinking about what's working for everybody and trying to kind of, make sure that the systems are, inclusive, are people who've got lived experience, which isn't necessarily removed from poverty or removed from adversity, or then we have people who are going to stick with, and with tenacity, they're going to stick with the objectives of making sure that as a country, we reduce our emissions, we reduce what we're contributing to climate change, and they won't let that out of their sight. So I think lived experience means that people aren't doing it for bonuses or for promotion. They're doing it because it means something to them. And that's certainly why I'm doing it. It's an imperative, really, that you have leaders who are able to offer honesty and are able to, instead of, I think what happens as people kind of enter, powerful industries, I'm thinking particularly of places like finance, where maybe law even, but certainly where you feel that you have to sort of take on a certain shape and mold, and you have to become a certain type of person and sound a certain way and wear a certain type of clothing and so on. And then you've got some incredible innovators and leaders in that space who are going, no, you don't. You don't at all. Check me out. I'm doing this. I'm intelligent. I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm standing strong. And actually, I'm creating an open pathway for other people coming alongside. I'm not just standing here going, look at me, I have this job, but there is no way up. It's like, no, I'm here and I'm open. And I think that's maybe the importance of that lived experience in leadership thing, is they will not, hopefully, and sadly if that does happen, but hopefully they will not let that door close on people coming behind them. So there's even more motivation on making sure that people are coming through, and not necessarily, I'm not talking about prejudice, but I'm talking about knowing the value of an unusual approach to life, of coming around the houses, of not necessarily getting all straight A stars and going straight to Oxford. And that's not to knock anyone who's done that at all, but it's just that it's not the only way. It wasn't my way. And as you said, I do have 4 degrees, but my God, you wouldn't have, that was a pretty haphazard journey to get there. So I think, lived experience, being a bit worn in, being a bit responsive is important. But I think what is also a key is that you are remembering your values and your community when you're getting there,
Yeah, more power. I love this. For me, I see this conflict when I don't tend to watch the news. I don't listen to people who be like, you're crazy. But for me, what we consume, both mentally and also actually physically, is so powerful that I can't do it. But I think if anyone could have this as a newsflash, which is, being more inclusive doesn't mean less of. I know that people may feel that it's them or us, but coming back to something you said super early, which is the power of collaboration, of community, making things sustainable for not just now, but the future. If we really were to unleash our full capabilities and authentically be able to stand in our truth and our power and collaborate and communicate and connect, like, we would make more success, whatever that metric of success looks like for anybody, than we could ever imagine. But instead, I pop on the news and it's this and that, and these people are doing this and that person doing that. I'm like, God damn it, we're not understanding the assignment. There is more than we could ever imagine if we focused in on the power of collaboration and people being able to show up in their weird, wonderful, creative, quirky ways.
Absolutely. I think that the thing that is as old as time is the kind of trick of divide and rule, and it is such a waste of time, and it benefits only the people at the top for a short period of time. All it does, it gets someone into office, it gets someone 4 years, 5 years term of, as an MP or as a prime minister, whatever it be. It does nothing for the majority. So it's, if you sense that you are being turned against your neighbor, if suspicion is the majority of what's taking over your sense of other people around you, then you've been had. And if you've been had, so then yeah, you know, you're a fool. you have to look at how many times this has happened. We are literally, you know, pre-Roman times, pretty much every civilization, apart from, by the way, and this is an important point as well, people sort of think that this has always been that patriarchy and so on has always been the way. We have matriarchies, incredible ones that are still going, but certainly ones that were dominating the world in the past, thousands of years ago, that have all been forgotten, and the various writings about them have been destroyed. I wonder why. But where that wasn't the way, and actually it was about sharing, and it was community. And I'm not saying, by the way, women and men, it's not that, but it's just this kind of divide and rule mentality, this kind of take as much as you can, pull the ladder up behind you mentality. It doesn't benefit you. You will on your deathbed feel bad. You will regret it, and everybody else suffers as a result. It's just not worth it. It's a pointless choice. One of my favorite films, and you know what, anyone who is listening to this who is a friend of mine or family member will laugh, because I studied film, so I actually have, you know, I do have some good taste in film, but Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. Look, it's a brilliant film in so many ways. But one of the things I love about it is it's about humans coming back to the same decision process, even when they've had all of the experiences that tell them that they need to lean away. But they're like, ah, and at the end, I think Al Pacino says vanity, definitely my favorite sin. And it's like, exactly, you've fallen for it again.
Yeah. Oh my. I'm gonna have to revisit that one, and maybe we get some t-shirts printed or banners to say sustainably, of course, but don't feel bad on your deathbed. Do the good thing. Do the good thing.
The good thing.
Yeah, do the good things. Oh, and that, honestly, that is powerful beyond my imagination. And I would love to. Our plane has gone interstellar. It's not even like 30,000 feet. It's gone, and I need to land it with you soon. I'm sure, for both of us to do other things, unfortunately. But fulfillment is deeply personal. I know that success doesn't, you know, it's not one size fits all. You know, we're talking about innovation, we're talking about widening the gate and opening opportunities. But I'd love to get your take on how individuals can find meaning in their work, whatever that meaning looks like for them. And I think certainly my work as a coach, I find many people, many listeners feel torn between pursuing passion projects or things that really resonate with the core of who their values make them, and staying in a safe, for your example, fashion industry career. What advice would you give anyone that's sort of navigating that? Or should I, shouldn't I? I can feel something, but I'm not sure about making the step. Like, what would some of your advice be to someone that may be in that space at the moment?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I think some of the instinct is to say some obvious things like life is too short, and, you know, you're just going to have to feel uncomfortable and go for it. And there are so many things like that can be said. But do you know the one that really feels like the honest answer to that? And it's something I'm still doing myself, and I probably will continue to do until the end of my life, is learn to feel comfortable in your skin, like truly comfortable in your skin. And that might be comfortable in your past, comfortable in your feelings, things that you got wrong, things that you aspire to, things that you hope for. All of the bits that make you you. What are the things that make you feel nervous? Why? What makes you shy away? Where's that coming from? And just keep revisiting it. What, like in the personhood of who you physically are, where do you feel a level of comfort and peace? And find that and lean towards that. And I don't think you can always feel that. I mean, it's wonderful if you've got the time to spend getting full zen, and some people do, and some people get there. I think I do my best, do a little bit of yoga here and a bit but look, I don't always have the time to stay full zen, but I do know if I take a moment with myself and I look for where I'm feeling really comfortable in my skin, that usually guides me to the right direction for myself. So I think it's that. Yeah, I can hear someone's knocking on my door. It's a delivery, but I'm going to ignore it. It's fine.
Great. No, thank you so much. That is a powerful one. And I was talking to someone the other day, and he was like, imagine yourself as a tuning fork, you know, and it sort of vibrates, and and the role that you can have yourself or with someone's support, be it a coach, mentor, what have you, to just calm the vibrations down so that it's centered and it's balanced. It's still a tuning fork, but it's not all over the place with this frenetic energy around, oh God, I got to do this, and oh my God, I'm way behind my peers, and at 30 I should have been married with 16 children and a millionaire, and by 40 definitely I should have had it. No, like just calm yourself down. And I think that's what I take away from what you say. It's like, we, good or bad, I think it's a case of perspective, but to really value, love oneself, I don't think it's possible to hate one's past experiences or actions in coming to peace with where you are now. Because, you know, when I hear your journey, you move progressively forward. Like every day you got up, took a step and leant towards that peace, and then you made it, oh my God, I'm going to swing from this tree to the next tree. Hope I make it. Yes, you did. And then you've leveled up, and then you swing for another. Hope I make it. Yes, you did. And if we see life as this mystical journey towards greater peace, acceptance, and fulfillment of our unique 1 in 8 billion desires, gifts, talents, you name it, then like I have this vision, like what would the world look like? Do you know what I mean? Like what would the world really look like? So that is such valuable guidance, and thank you. And I think as I draw to the close, I wanted to wrap up and leave our listeners with some more practical inspiration that they can carry forward. And I think I'd like to bring back to IntoNetZero. So for young professionals or students who want to enter into the sustainability sector or social equity fields, what could be a first step that they could take to expand their horizons and their knowledge around what may be there for them?
I think the first thing to do, I mean, there are two kind of different things there in a sense, because when it comes to net zero, look, I want to tell young people the opportunities are immense. You will be welcomed with open arms. People are desperate to get people through these doors into these wonderful kind of new green hubs and these fantastically attuned skills and training courses. So I think people looking in that direction, just be mildly curious. Look at the skills you already have. Believe me, they will find a place in the net zero workforce, 100%. You know, so I think just ask, get involved with your local green hub, you know, maybe speak to somebody there and see, what can I do? How could I pivot this? Does this make sense? And you will get really solid guidance, I'm sure, from any of your kind of local green hubs in that sense. So I think it's not worrying that you might not see immediately what the job is, because guess what? Some of the jobs haven't actually been invented yet. You will get to shape them. It's a really exciting opportunity. So just take those first steps, be interested, and believe that the skills you already have are valued in the net zero workforce. When it comes to social equity, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. And in a sense, this is something you need to take into the net zero workforce as well, which is learn to listen. Listen in your friendship group, listen amongst your family members, volunteer, learn to your opinions and your values and all of those strident things. God, I remember being a young girl with, and I kid you not, a red cap, and I'd be spouting Marx and Friedrich Engels, and I still, you know, I still do, to be honest. I just haven't got the red cap. But no, but I mean, look, but it that I remember that kind of passion and that strident conviction that I had. And in a sense, that should never leave you, and it's an important part of youth. But just learn to listen a little bit as well. And I think when it comes to social equity, it's about connecting with people who are outside of your experience. Go and speak to somebody who's elderly. Listen to them. They're not just an old person in any way. They're somebody who has experience. There's somebody with a life well lived, potentially, who can tell you about what's happened and, you know, what they've learned. So, or it might be that you're volunteering at a local hospital and you start to realize that actually their funding is, you know, there are some really big issues there with how things are systemically happening. And maybe that's something you could get involved in because you're good at maths, you want to do accounting. So there's lots of ways that you can support and you can help, but I think that starts with listening, and I would hope that that would be a skill that people would bring to the net zero workforce. Listening, and with net zero, have the confidence to believe you have the right to shape it, because it is literally being formed as we speak, and if you're not stepping up there and taking those first steps, somebody else will. So it would be better if it's people who've got that forward thinking future generation hat on and want to take this world into a better space.
If I had a microphone, I'd just drop it on the floor right now. I would drop it on the floor. Thank you so much. And, you know, I told no lies at the beginning when I said that in this conversation, we would dive into your remarkable career journey. We've done that. We've heard about the bold steps that you've taken to dismantle barriers. Practical wisdom has been, I've stopped counting the gems. I'm going to have to play this back on loop and just go, oh my God, and write that down and write that down. Practical wisdom that you shared for anyone, even just now, who may be looking to follow their passions and create meaningful impact. And I more or less sip my coffee, but at times it's gone cold because I've just been captivated. So thank you so much, Jenny, because you have understood the assignment, and I think this is going to be, without doubt, many people's favorite episode, because you're doing it. Women in leadership, sustainability, which is something that is so key to all of us, and leaving us with that idea around being curious, listening, and stepping up to the plate to sort of shape the world to be what we'd all love it to be, which is, well, still here for future generations. That's a big mission. So thank you. But before we go, is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't covered at all? Because I'm listening.
No, do you know what? I think I've probably I've probably said most of what I need to say. I think one of the things that I would really like to see people move further toward is honesty and humility over tokenism. And I think maybe that sums up a lot of what I've been saying. It's okay that we don't have all the answers, and it's okay that you might stand up to talk in a conference and be on a panel amongst really important people and think, I don't really agree that we've done very much, and I think we need to do more. It's okay, but just be honest, because then we know where we're starting from. So I think it's like ban tokenism, ban babble. Let's just be honest, and let's start from there, and let's invest boldly, and let's move forward on that principle. I think that's probably the last thing I'd say.
Thank you so much. That's another t-shirt, sustainably printed, that we could have. Honesty and humility for the win. So thank you so much for your time, so generously given. And yeah, I mean, so many gems. But I look forward to catching up with you soon, and good luck with the hilarious children and life and partnership and all of the wonderful things that you're doing. And thank you once again.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Brilliant. All right, we'll catch up soon. All right.
Speak soon.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye, Kofi.